Across the vast timeline of human existence, a haunting rhythm repeats itself. Civilizations rise in brilliance, only to collapse into silence. From the forgotten stone cities buried beneath jungles to the vanished coastlines swallowed by ancient seas, history seems less like a straight line and more like a circle that endlessly resets itself. The same pattern echoes across continents: an age of enlightenment, a sudden fall, a rebirth built on the ruins of what came before. But why? Was it nature's hand, reshaping the world through cataclysm and fire? Or was there something else, a force hidden behind the veil of history, deciding when humanity should start over? Ancient myths speak of gods who wiped the slate clean, of floods that cleansed the world, of empires erased overnight as if by design. Modern science finds traces of abrupt global shifts, ice ages, magnetic reversals, lost coastlines, yet the cause of each collapse remains shrouded in uncertainty. Perhaps humanity is not evolving forward, but being guided or trapped within a loop we cannot see. Each ruin, each myth, each forgotten epoch might be a message. We have been here before. Welcome to Deformed History. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. It begins with a silence too heavy to be forgotten. The silence that follows collapse. Long before written history, long before the first clay tablets of Sumer recorded the names of kings, the earth had already witnessed worlds rise and fall. Across continents, deep beneath layers of ash and silt, lie ruins that should not exist. Cyclopean stones aligned with celestial precision, megaliths quarried from mountains miles away, ancient maps that seem to remember coastlines as they were before the last ice age. They whisper a truth that modern history refuses to hear. Humanity's timeline may not be a ladder of progress, but a spiral that turns upon itself. Archaeologists once believed civilization began around 5,000 years ago with the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Indus Valley peoples. But discoveries like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey shattered that certainty. Dated to around 11,000 years ago, at the very end of the last glacial period, its intricate pillars and astronomical alignments revealed a level of organization, engineering, and spiritual understanding thought impossible for hunter-gatherers. Someone, or something, had built a sanctuary of stone at a time when humans were supposedly primitive. The question isn't just how they built it, but why they buried it. Burial implies intention. Göbekli Tepe wasn't ruined by time or nature. It was deliberately entombed, sealed as if to protect it or hide it. Was it an act of preservation or erasure? And if this was not the first great culture, what came before it? Throughout ancient records, echoes of earlier worlds appear, fragments of memory too consistent to dismiss. The Greeks spoke of a great year, a cosmic cycle where fire and flood reset creation. The Mayans spoke of suns that rise and die, worlds born and destroyed in rhythm with the heavens. The Hindus preserved the concept of yugas, epochs of rising virtue followed by decline and dissolution. Even Plato, drawing from Egyptian priests, described Atlantis as a civilization destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune, yet he insisted it was not mere allegory, but memory. Could these myths, scattered across ages and languages, be the distorted recollection of real resets. Geological evidence hints at violent transitions. Around 12,800 years ago, at the onset of the Younger Dryas, the world suddenly plunged into a mini ice age. Temperatures dropped, megafauna vanished, and sea levels fluctuated dramatically. Some scientists, like the proponents of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, argue that a comet or fragmenting meteor struck Earth, triggering massive fires and floods. Others point to rapid glacial meltwater events that rewrote coastlines. Either way, something enormous happened. Something that might have erased not only species, but entire chapters of civilization. When the ice receded, humanity emerged again, scattered, traumatized, rebuilding. But in the ruins of that previous world, memory turned to myth. Survivors became gods, teachers, civilizers, who reintroduced agriculture, architecture, and astronomy to the broken remnants of humankind. In Mesopotamia, they were the Apkallu, 7 sages sent by the gods after the flood to restore order and knowledge. In Egypt, they were the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, who ruled before the pharaohs. In South America, they were Viracocha, Quetzalcoatl, or Kukulkan, bearded bringers of wisdom who came after the Great Deluge. Why do so many cultures remember the same pattern? Destruction, survival, and the return of light from mysterious teachers. Perhaps the question is not whether the cycle happened, but why it continues. Civilizations do not simply fall from exhaustion, they are reset. Some collapses follow natural disasters, others are subtler, ideological, spiritual, or systemic. Consider the sudden vanishing of advanced societies whose ruins still defy explanation. The Indus Valley civilization, once thriving with urban planning, sanitation systems, and trade, disappeared without signs of war. The Maya abandoned their monumental cities long before European contact. The mysterious sea peoples erased Bronze Age kingdoms across the Mediterranean around 1200 BCE, plunging the world into centuries of darkness. Even Rome, mighty, cultured, technological, eventually fractured, leaving Europe to forget the very engineering it once mastered. It is as though humanity rises to a threshold of understanding. Then something, internal or external, intervenes. Knowledge disperses. Records are lost. Continuity breaks. Each age believes it is the first to awaken, unaware that it walks paths already paved by forgotten ancestors. Could there be a mechanism behind this? A natural rhythm embedded in the planet, or a deliberate pattern imposed upon us? The ancients saw time as cyclical, not linear. They built calendars not just to mark seasons but to anticipate endings, the precession of the equinoxes, solar cycles, alignments between Earth and the galactic plane. The Mayas' long count calendar, often misinterpreted as predicting doomsday, was in fact a map of cosmic resets. The Vedic texts describe each cycle ending with pralaya, dissolution, followed by rebirth. Even in modern physics, entropy guarantees that all systems, from stars to societies, decay before reorganizing into new forms. Could civilization itself obey the same universal law? And yet another possibility looms. Darker, more deliberate. What if the resets are not purely natural but managed? Every era has its gatekeepers, empires, priesthoods, institutions that rewrite what is remembered and what is erased. In the aftermath of collapse, survivors control the narrative. History becomes a curated illusion, shaped to serve the next order. The Library of Alexandria burned, The Mayan codices were destroyed by missionaries. Countless texts vanished during conquests and inquisitions. What knowledge died in those flames? There are whispers that history itself is engineered, that power sustains itself by rewriting the story of human progress. Every empire, from Babylon to Rome to modern systems of control, thrives on selective amnesia. Technologies rediscovered, sciences suppressed, discoveries ignored until the world is ready, or made to believe it is. Some call it coincidence. Others see the fingerprint of a hidden intelligence guiding humanity's amnesia, keeping us from remembering who we once were. But the earth remembers. Beneath the sands of Egypt, sonar scans reveal corridors buried deeper than the known dynasties. Off the coast of India, near Dwarka, divers have found ruins submerged under 50 feet of water. Walls, streets, and artifacts carbon-dated thousands of years before accepted timelines. In the Andes, granite blocks carved with laser-like precision sit scattered as if flung by cosmic violence. Across Siberia, Antarctica, and the Pacific, traces of architecture lie frozen or drowned, silent witnesses of worlds erased. Each discovery is treated as an anomaly, a curiosity, never a paradigm shift. Yet as anomalies multiply, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. The deeper we dig, the older civilization becomes. And with every revelation, the same unease returns. How many times has this story played out? If history is a cycle, then we are living somewhere within its turn. Scientists warn that our own age bears the signs of another reset. Climate extremes, magnetic anomalies, solar irregularities, mass extinctions, the slow unraveling of systems built on illusion. Are these coincidences, or the prelude to another great forgetting? Humanity builds towers of data and glass, not temples of stone, but the fragility is the same. One catastrophe, natural or engineered, could erase it all. Still, there are traces, subtle and persistent, of memory trying to awaken. Ancient symbols reappear in modern thought. The same geometry that governed megalithic temples now structures the codes of digital space. The same myths that spoke of destruction and renewal echo in our art, our science, our restless search for meaning. It is as if the past is whispering through the static, urging us to remember before the next wave comes. Perhaps that is the real test of civilization. Not whether we can reach the stars, but whether we can remember who we were before we forgot. For in every ruin lies a warning, and in every myth a mirror. And somewhere in that mirror a question lingers, one that no empire, no doctrine, no archive can silence. If history keeps resetting, who or what is pressing the button? To understand why humanity may be trapped in a cycle of resets, one must look not only at the evidence of destruction, but at the fragments of knowledge that survived it. Knowledge, like light, leaves traces even in darkness. When civilizations vanish, they do not vanish entirely. Fragments remain, symbols carved into stone, myths carried across generations, numbers and ratios encoded in temples, pyramids, and monuments aligned with the stars. Across every continent, the ruins whisper the same message. Someone before us knew more than they should have, and that knowledge was never meant to vanish so completely by accident. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its construction defies simple explanations of copper chisels and rope pulleys. Its base is aligned to true north with microscopic precision. Its proportions encode mathematical constants, p, the golden ratio, and relationships between the Earth and the Sun. It functions not only as a tomb, but as a map, a clock, a cosmic mirror. How could a society officially born only a few thousand years ago have mastered geometry that modern engineers still debate? The same geometry appears in Teotihuacan, in the layout of Angkor Wat, in the sacred grid of ancient China and the Indus cities. Did all these cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, somehow converge on the same mathematical vision of the cosmos? Or did they inherit it? When examined closely, these alignments suggest a legacy, not an invention. The Egyptians spoke of their civilization as a reawakening, not a beginning. They claimed their knowledge came from the Zep Tepi, the first time, an era when gods walked among men. The Mayans, too, believed they were living in the fourth sun, built upon the ashes of the third. And the Sumerians recorded that kingship descended from heaven after the flood, as if humanity had simply resumed an ancient order. Could it be that all these societies were restorations, not creations, fragments of a pattern that keeps rebooting after each cataclysm? If that is true, then who are the carriers of memory between the worlds? In every myth, they are described as luminous beings, half human, half divine, who appear at the dawn of each civilization. The Apkallu of Mesopotamia, the Watchers of Enoch, the Nephilim of Genesis, the Devas and Asuras of India, all are teachers and rebels, architects and destroyers. Their gift is knowledge, but their curse is hubris. It is almost as if these myths are warning us. Knowledge unbalanced by wisdom leads to ruin, and when ruin comes, the world must reset. Modern science, too, hints at cycles that shape life and civilization alike. Earth's climate follows rhythms, Milankovitch cycles, solar maxima, geomagnetic reversals. Every so often the poles flip, the magnetosphere weakens, radiation increases, and ecosystems collapse. Ancient texts from China to Mesoamerica speak of the heavens turning upside down, the sun rising in the west, fire raining from the sky. Could those be memories of a magnetic reversal or cosmic impact witnessed by our ancestors? Even the crust of the earth moves in patterns more sudden than we imagine. Charles Hapgood, a historian once supported by Albert Einstein, proposed that entire crustal shifts could displace continents thousands of miles in a geological instant. The evidence may lie beneath Antarctica. Radar scans have revealed what appear to be mountain ranges and river systems under the ice, as though the land was once temperate and inhabited. If a pole shift did occur, it could explain the global floods, the sudden freezing of mammoths in Siberia, and the loss of ancient coastlines remembered only in myth. Yet beyond natural causes, something else emerges. The sense that humanity's resets are not random, but timed. The ancients obsessed over celestial cycles, not because they were poetic, but because they understood time as a living force. In ancient Sumer, the calendar was not just for farming. It tracked conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn, alignments believed to herald great transitions. In Hindu cosmology, every yuga ends with dissolution and rebirth. Kali Yuga, the dark age of ignorance, always followed by Satya Yuga, the age of truth. The Maya calculated the end of their long count, not as an apocalypse, but as a moment of renewal. What if these mythic calendars are warnings from a forgotten scientific age, a record of cyclical catastrophes caused by cosmic events like solar flares, asteroid swarms, or even periodic disruptions from an unseen celestial body orbiting on the edge of our solar system? In 1984, NASA astronomers reported evidence of a mysterious gravitational force, affecting distant comets. They called it Planet X or Nibiru, echoing the ancient Sumerian term for the crossing planet. Although later dismissed, the idea has refused to die. Some researchers suggest that a long-period companion star or massive planet could periodically disturb the Oort cloud, sending showers of comets toward Earth in cycles of tens of thousands of years. If true, then mass extinctions, climate chaos, and global floods might not be random tragedies, but scheduled resets built into the cosmic architecture of our solar system. If nature itself imposes resets, then perhaps civilizations rise not in spite of them, but because of them. Destruction creates the conditions for rebirth, just as forest fires trigger seeds to sprout. But there is another layer, the human one. After each fall, knowledge returns not all at once, but selectively. Those who remember become the architects of the next world. And here, the pattern darkens again. Look at the myths of Prometheus stealing fire, of Enki defying the gods to save humanity, of Thoth teaching writing and number to the Egyptians, of Quetzalcoatl giving maize and time to humankind. In every story, knowledge is both forbidden and necessary. Someone decides what we may know and what must be forgotten. Even in the modern age, knowledge remains gate-kept, hidden behind institutions, patents, classified archives, and political dogma. The printing press, the internet, and now artificial intelligence have each threatened those gates. And each time, power has adapted, rewriting history for the next cycle. Perhaps the resets are not simply geological or cosmic. Perhaps they are sociological, an invisible mechanism by which knowledge, once too disruptive, triggers a controlled collapse. When paradigms threaten power, history bends to erase them. From the burning of heretical manuscripts to the quiet suppression of anomalous archaeology, the erasure continues. Every time truth comes too close to rewriting the narrative, a reset, intellectual or literal, seems to follow. This might explain why every age imagines itself as the first to awaken, and yet all ages leave behind ruins that tell us we have been here before. The ancients were not ignorant. They were survivors of prior knowledge. The colossal stones of Baalbek, the underground city of Derinkuyu, the megaliths of Pumapunku, each testifies to techniques and tools beyond what we are taught to believe possible for their time. And when their builders vanished, so did the blueprints. Still, the most unsettling evidence of the cycle lies not in stones, but in the human genome. Geneticists have discovered bottlenecks in human evolution, moments when our population nearly vanished. Around 70,000 years ago, during the Toba catastrophe, humanity may have been reduced to a few thousand individuals. But what if this was not the only bottleneck? What if, again and again, the species was reduced and reshaped, its memory wiped, its records erased? Even language, that living archive of human continuity, carries the scars of resets. Words for sun, mother, and sky trace back tens of thousands of years, surviving like embers while entire civilizations burned to ash. Modern archaeology still clings to linear models of progress, yet the evidence increasingly points to cycles of rise and regression. Knowledge blooms, centralizes, becomes rigid, and collapses under its own weight, only to re-emerge, scattered and reinterpreted. It is as though civilization itself obeys a fractal law. The pattern repeats, each time smaller in duration but greater in complexity. Our modern digital empire, barely centuries old, already mirrors the hubris of ancient Atlantis. global networks, boundless data, and the illusion of permanence. But every tower built without humility eventually falls. And when it does, the next world will dig through our ruins, wondering who we were and why we forgot. Perhaps the real mystery is not that we are stuck in a cycle, but that we have never broken free from it. Each reset begins with loss. But maybe loss is part of the design. The question is, whose design? Nature's indifferent rhythm, the will of a higher intelligence guiding evolution, or humanity's own unconscious instinct to destroy what it cannot sustain? The deeper one looks, the harder it becomes to tell where accident ends and intention begins. Myths and science blur. Time folds back upon itself. And in that fold, perhaps there lies a truth so unbearable that it must always be forgotten until we are ready to remember again. For now the evidence sleeps beneath oceans and glaciers, in forbidden vaults and forgotten libraries. But the pulse continues, the heartbeat of history counting down to the next great turn. And if the past is any indication, the reset will not come as fire from the sky or flood from the sea, but quietly, as memory itself fades once more. When that silence returns, will we recognize it this time? Or will we, like every civilization before us, mistake the end for a beginning? If humanity truly moves in recurring cycles of rise and collapse, then the evidence of past resets must exist not only in myth or ruin, but in the ground beneath our feet, and in the anomalies that official history quietly ignores. For centuries, explorers, geologists, and archaeologists have stumbled upon fragments of impossible timelines, objects out of place, layers of civilization buried where none should be, technologies that hint at knowledge too advanced for their supposed age. Yet each discovery, instead of rewriting history, is quietly filed away as unexplained. It is as if the world's memory has been systematically edited, piece by piece, until the grand design of our past has become unrecognizable. One of the most striking examples lies deep beneath the sands of Egypt. While tourists marvel at the pyramids of Giza, far fewer know of the labyrinth described by Herodotus, a subterranean complex said to contain 3,000 rooms of hieroglyphs and histories carved in stone. He called it more astonishing than all the pyramids combined. In the 19th century, a team of explorers claimed to have rediscovered its flooded halls near Hawara, but their records vanished. Modern radar scans conducted in the early 2000s confirmed vast structures underground, yet access was swiftly restricted. If such a labyrinth exists, it might contain the record of pre-dynastic Egypt, or of an even older civilization erased by flood and time. Why would such a structure be hidden from study? Across the globe, similar patterns emerge. In 2013, off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, divers uncovered what appears to be a submerged city. Terraces, staircases, and platforms carved from bedrock, lying 100 feet below the waves. Debate raged. Natural formation or man-made? But its geometry, its right angles, and its alignment with ancient Japanese legends of a lost land called Mu make coincidence difficult to accept. For it to be above sea level, Yonaguni must have been built before the last ice melt, more than 12,000 years ago, at the very same period when Göbekli Tepe and other ancient anomalies appeared. How could cultures separated by oceans produce such synchronized bursts of sophistication? The same question haunts the ruins beneath Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, where sonar reveals stone temples and roadways now lying under cold Andean waters. Local legends speak of Tiwanaku, not as the first city, but as the last remnant of a world drowned by celestial disaster. Even more curious, its monuments are aligned not to the current equinox, but to a position of the stars that matches roughly 15,000 years ago. Was Tiwanaku built before the flood, and then rebuilt afterward by survivors who remembered its pattern? Across continents, these submerged cities, impossible alignments, and buried monuments form a quiet map of a forgotten world, one that may have spanned the globe before the Younger Dryas event. The historian Graham Hancock and geologist Randall Carlson have both argued that these sites belong to a civilization older than recorded time, destroyed by cataclysm, and remembered as myth. To conventional academia, such claims are heresy. Yet the ground continues to yield proof that the past is deeper than we dare to imagine. Perhaps the key lies in what the ancients knew about time itself. The Sumerians recorded reigns of kings lasting tens of thousands of years, absurd by modern standards, unless years referred not to solar cycles but precessional ages, each spanning millennia. The Mayans counted time in cycles of creation and destruction, each linked to cosmic alignments. In Egypt, priests spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time, when the gods raised order from chaos, not metaphorically, but as an event repeated whenever the world renewed itself. These were not primitive metaphors for change. They were scientific calendars encoded in myth. The ancients were not simply measuring days, they were measuring destiny, and destiny, as they saw it, was circular. Every 25,120 years, the period of one full precession of the equinoxes, the heavens complete their rotation. To ancient astronomer priests, this great year marked a cosmic heartbeat, golden ages of light followed by dark ages of forgetfulness. At each turning, the world trembles. Floods, fires, and upheavals cleanse the slate. Modern geologists may not speak in such mystical terms, but their data agrees. Around every 25,000 to 30,000 years, Earth experiences major climate disruptions, magnetic disturbances, and species turnover. The ancients were not guessing, they were remembering. But what if those cycles are not only natural, but encoded, as if humanity itself were being recalibrated? DNA, after all, carries not just biological memory, but adaptive triggers that activate under stress. Could civilizations function the same way? Could the resets be the universe's way of forcing evolution, destroying stagnation to rebuild creativity? In physics, entropy guarantees that systems must periodically collapse to renew order. Perhaps civilization, too, is an organism bound by that same cosmic principle. And yet, the pattern of deliberate concealment suggests something beyond natural law. Over and over, after each collapse, knowledge re-emerges incomplete, its most dangerous pieces missing. The mythic flood may not only have drowned cities, but purified memory. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods destroy mankind for learning too much. In Genesis, the Tower of Babel collapses when humans attempt to reach heaven, the divine realm of knowledge and creation. Could these stories be echoes of real events, when ancient societies reached technological or spiritual thresholds forbidden by their own guardians? Some researchers speculate that traces of advanced pre-flood technology still exist, misinterpreted by archaeologists. In the basalt ruins of Baalbek, stones weighing over 1,000 tons were placed with impossible precision. In India's ancient texts, the Vedas, descriptions of flying machines called vimanas appear alongside instructions for metallurgy and propulsion. In the Andes, Legends of the Viracochas describe radiant beings who wielded tools of light. None of this can be proven by modern science, and yet it keeps resurfacing, as though memory refuses to die. Even the Earth's magnetic record holds anomalies that hint at sudden global events. Layers of glassy tektites, the result of intense heat and pressure, are found across continents, dating roughly to 12,000 years ago. Nanodiamonds, platinum spikes, and melted spherules suggest a cataclysmic bombardment. But the strangest discovery is cultural, not geological. At that same moment in prehistory, human art exploded with sudden complexity. Cave paintings, symbolic burials, and astronomy appeared almost overnight. Could the trauma of destruction have triggered a leap in consciousness, or was it the return of survivors bearing forgotten wisdom? If the cycle is real, then its traces should appear not only in stones, but in stories. And indeed, from Polynesia to the Arctic, from Aboriginal Dreamtime to Celtic myth, every culture preserves the same archetype: the flood, the fire, the fall, and the rebirth. The names change: Deucalion, Manu, Noah, Utnapishtim, but the essence remains identical. Humanity disobeys, the heavens rage, the waters rise, and a chosen few survive to rebuild. In each version, divine intermediaries instruct the survivors how to farm, how to build, how to measure the heavens. Myths of destruction are always followed by myths of education. The reset, it seems, is both punishment and preparation. So what is being prepared? What purpose could such recurring amnesia serve? Some suggest that civilization is an experiment, a simulation of consciousness tested again and again. Others, more esoteric, propose that Earth itself is a living archive, a planetary school designed to teach sentient beings the balance between creation and destruction. In such a view, the resets are not failures, but lessons repeated until learned. Yet the persistence of suppression, of deliberate forgetting, complicates the idea of natural growth. Someone, or something, seems determined to keep humanity within boundaries, never allowing the memory of full mastery to return. Throughout history, this control has worn many masks: priesthoods guarding sacred knowledge, empires rewriting chronicles, modern institutions gatekeeping science. But the intent is always the same: to manage what humanity remembers. The reset, then, may not be a single catastrophic event, but an ongoing process, an erosion of truth that culminates in collapse when the system can no longer sustain its contradictions. Today, the pattern continues. Digital archives replace libraries, but censorship grows more subtle. Data is infinite, yet meaning is drowned. The illusion of progress blinds us to the repetition beneath. Ancient warnings echo through our satellites and screens: pride, overreach, the forgetting of origins. The cycle tightens and the rhythm returns. If these patterns hold, the next great reset may not come from the heavens, but from within, an implosion of civilization under its own complexity. The ancients may have known this too. Their prophecies always end not with destruction, but with awakening, a moment when humanity either transcends the cycle or vanishes back into myth. And so the question lingers: are we nearing another threshold? The ice is melting again. The magnetic field is weakening. The skies grow restless. Our machines hum with power beyond understanding. Our knowledge deepens, but our wisdom shrinks. The same signs that marked the fall of prior ages are upon us once more: denial, hubris, disconnection from the natural order. Yet if the cycle is law, perhaps breaking it requires something more than survival. Perhaps it demands remembrance. To see the pattern is to begin to escape it. But can a species built on forgetting ever truly remember? In the stillness of forgotten temples, in the silence between collapsing empires, that question has been asked before. It will be asked again. And perhaps, when the next dawn comes after the storm, someone will find our ruins and wonder, who built all this, and why did they vanish? Then, once more, the cycle will begin. The more one studies the fragments left behind by lost civilizations, the more one senses a hidden order, a code embedded not in stone or scripture, but in pattern. Civilizations rise, knowledge flourishes, catastrophe strikes, memory fades, and humanity begins again, as if driven by an unseen metronome. The rhythm is so precise, so methodical, that it suggests design. But whose design? Is it nature's, written into the cosmic pulse of stars at tectonic plates? Or is it something far more deliberate, a mechanism of control meant to keep us confined within cycles of ignorance and rediscovery, never progressing beyond a certain threshold of awareness? Ancient traditions seemed to understand this. They warned that knowledge was not lost merely through disaster, but through manipulation. The Greeks called it lethe, the river of forgetfulness, which souls must cross before reincarnation. The Egyptians spoke of the veil of Neith, the hidden face of the goddess, which separated mortals from the memory of the first time. The Gnostics believed that human souls were trapped within an illusionary construct, maintained by archons, entities that fed on human ignorance and emotion. These myths were not random. They formed a psychological map of the cycle itself. The human condition, they implied, was not simply one of survival, but of amnesia. In this light, the resets are not only historical events, they are acts of forgetting, enforced on a global scale. Even the word history betrays the illusion. From the Greek historia, meaning inquiry or narrative, it depends on who tells the story and what is chosen to be remembered. When empires rise after each collapse, they curate the ruins of the past, rewriting them into convenient myths. What does not fit the narrative is labeled superstition, anomaly, or fraud. The guardians of knowledge become the editors of reality, and so the truth of prior ages is filtered, distorted, and sealed away, not destroyed, but quarantined. The medieval church inherited this role with ruthless precision. In the name of salvation, it absorbed and reinterpreted ancient cosmologies, turning cosmic cycles into moral allegory. Floods became punishments, the fall of civilizations became divine wrath, and the rebirth of worlds was reduced to prophecy. Libraries were burned, temples razed, calendars redefined. What was once scientific or metaphysical knowledge, the tracking of precession, the mapping of energy lines, the measurement of harmonic resonance, became pagan or heretical. Yet fragments of this forbidden science still survived in secret societies, alchemical texts, and Masonic architecture, cryptic reminders that the cycle of control itself could be resisted by those who remembered. Even within the Renaissance, that so-called rebirth of knowledge, one finds shadows of this control. Leonardo da Vinci filled his notebooks with machines that anticipated modern technology, yet many of his designs remained hidden for centuries. Giordano Bruno spoke of infinite worlds and was burned alive for it. Galileo, for daring to describe the heavens truthfully, was silenced. Why? because every revelation that threatened the established order risked breaking the illusion of linear progress, the comforting belief that we were moving forward, not spinning in circles. Modern science, ironically, has become the new priesthood of certainty. It mocks the myths of old, yet it too enforces boundaries. The outliers, ancient maps showing Antarctica ice-free, advanced metallurgical artifacts, unexplained vitrification in megaliths, or the precision engineering of prehistoric sites, are dismissed not for lack of evidence, but for lack of explanation. The problem is not that these discoveries are false, it is that they do not fit. And so, like before, what cannot be understood is forgotten. But in the forgotten lies the truth. Across disciplines, clues converge toward a single disturbing possibility: that each reset is both a cleansing and a calibration. When human civilization approaches a level of awareness or power that threatens the equilibrium, whether through technology, consciousness, or knowledge of our true origins, the system intervenes. Sometimes that intervention takes the form of natural catastrophe. Sometimes it is economic collapse, war, or plague. And sometimes it is more subtle, the quiet rewriting of perception itself. Consider the Great Reset of the 14th century. Europe's population was decimated by plague, famine, and war. Yet from that darkness arose the seeds of a new world: printing, exploration, centralized power. But behind the narrative of progress lies an uncomfortable question. How did so much ancient knowledge vanish between the classical world and the Middle Ages? Roman concrete, Greek fire, the Antikythera mechanism, technologies centuries ahead of their rediscovery, simply disappeared. It is as if the reset had edited the human archive itself. The same pattern appears in the 19th century, an era of supposed enlightenment. Great fires destroyed entire cities: Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, all within decades. Massive World's Fairs rose in their place, showcasing ornate temporary architecture that resembled ancient palaces and star forts. Some researchers suggest these structures were remnants of a prior civilization, remnants quickly demolished under the pretense of exhibition. Whether true or not, the symbolism is striking: erase, rebuild, rebrand. A ritual of renewal disguised as progress. And in the digital age, the pattern continues. Only the tools have changed. Algorithms replace inquisitors. Data centers replace temples. Truth is no longer burned, but buried under infinite information. The reset has become internalized. The flood now flows through our own attention. Humanity forgets not because knowledge is lost, but because it is drowned. The result is the same. The memory of who we were fades once more. Yet, beneath the surface, some still remember. The language of the ancients, geometry, vibration, resonance, remains encoded in sacred sites across the world. The same mathematical ratios that govern the pyramids appear in the Parthenon, in Gothic cathedrals, even in modern circuit design. These ratios are not arbitrary. They reflect universal harmonics, the same frequencies found in atoms and stars. The ancients called it the music of the spheres. If such knowledge truly originated before recorded history, it may represent not superstition, but the remnants of a unified science, one that connected consciousness, matter, and energy. Perhaps it was this science that triggered the first Great Reset, a technology so powerful that its misuse fractured the world. Some traditions speak openly of this. In Hindu lore, the weapon of Brahmastra could annihilate cities. Its description eerily resembles modern nuclear detonation. In Plato's Timaeus, Atlantis falls after its people abused the power of the gods. In the Book of Enoch, the Watchers teach forbidden arts to humanity, resulting in chaos and corruption. The theme is always the same. Knowledge, once divine, becomes profane. Creation turns to destruction. Balance is restored through catastrophe. Perhaps this is why the cycle persists, because humanity, given the tools of creation, repeatedly chooses control over harmony. The reset, then, may not be punishment, but consequence. Each civilization pushes the boundaries of power until nature, or something greater, intervenes to remind us of the limits. But what if the limits are artificial? What if the resets are not acts of balance, but of containment? Some theories suggest that Earth's entire history might be a managed simulation, where resets serve to prevent the system from collapsing under accumulated error. In that sense, extinction events, empire falls, and memory wipes are the equivalent of reboots, maintaining stability within an experiment too vast to perceive. The ancient myths of gods descending from the heavens, teaching and testing humanity, could then be glimpses of the system's administrators, the watchers or architects, maintaining the cycle from outside time. To those who scoff, consider how modern humanity already mimics this pattern. Artificial intelligence is trained, tested, and reset whenever it develops instability. Digital worlds are wiped clean when code corrupts. In each case, memory is erased, the system begins anew, and only the architects remember the previous iterations. What if humanity itself is caught in such a recursive loop, an experiment repeating until consciousness evolves beyond it? If so, the great question becomes not how to survive the next reset, but how to remember through it. For memory is the one thing that transcends collapse. Even when monuments fall and languages die, symbols endure: spirals, eyes, stars, suns. These appear again and again, etched on megaliths, painted in caves, carved in temples, coded in logos. They are breadcrumbs left by those who remembered enough to leave a message. You have been here before. Perhaps that is the purpose of myth, to encode truth in a form that survives every flood. Facts can be burned, symbols cannot. A story, told with enough resonance, can outlast empires. And maybe, hidden within these ancient stories, lies the blueprint for breaking the cycle, the key to continuity of consciousness through the resets. But who among us will listen long enough to decode it? Humanity races forward, drunk on progress, blind to repetition. The same arrogance that doomed Atlantis now drives our machines and empires. We mistake data for wisdom, control for mastery. Yet deep within, the old fear lingers that it will all vanish again, swallowed by the next wave. The ancients might say that the reset has already begun. The signs are everywhere: magnetic anomalies, shifting poles, rising seas, collapsing ecosystems, the quiet dread that technology has outpaced our spirit. The question is not if the reset comes, but what it will erase this time. And when it does, will we finally remember enough to choose differently? Or will we, like every age before us, stand in the ruins once more, staring at the stars, and wonder how we ever forgot? If the cycle of resets is real, if humanity repeatedly climbs toward knowledge only to be thrown back into darkness, then perhaps the deeper mystery is not the destruction itself, but the forgetting that follows. How does a species capable of building megalithic wonders, aligning them with the stars, and encoding cosmic mathematics into stone suddenly lose all memory of its past. Stones endure, stars remain. Yet every time, the thread of understanding is severed, as though an invisible hand reaches into the collective mind and deletes entire volumes of history. Some researchers have called this cultural amnesia. Others see it as a psychological defense, a trauma response at the scale of civilization. Imagine surviving a global cataclysm, the sky filled with fire, oceans rising, continents trembling. For generations afterward, survival would matter more than remembrance. Stories would turn to myths, details would dissolve into metaphor, and the truth would sink beneath fear and time. But there is another possibility, that the forgetting is not accidental, that the reset includes not only physical destruction, but the systematic erasure of knowledge itself. Throughout history, one pattern repeats. The centers of learning are always the first to burn. The Library of Alexandria, containing thousands of years of wisdom, vanished under flames. The royal archives of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh were buried in ash. The Mayan codices, handwritten by ancient astronomers, were destroyed by the Spanish missionaries who declared them demonic. Even in modern times, wars and revolutions target universities, museums, and libraries. Every empire seems to understand instinctively that control over memory equals control over reality. And yet, despite these losses, fragments survive, as if knowledge, like a seed, can never be fully destroyed. In the 1940s, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found hidden in desert caves, preserving texts long thought lost. In India, oral traditions carried Sanskrit hymns for thousands of years before they were written. In Peru, the quipu, chords knotted in complex patterns, preserved information without language. These remnants suggest that across the ages, there have always been those who remembered, even when the world forgot. But who were they? In nearly every ancient culture, there are whispers of secret orders or priestly castes whose role was to safeguard forbidden knowledge. The Egyptian House of Life, the Babylonian Umanu, the Hebrew Essenes, the Mayan astronomer priests, the Druids, the Pythagoreans, each guarded their wisdom through symbols and initiation. Knowledge was never shared freely. It was earned through transformation. The logic was simple, yet profound. Only those who understood the balance of nature could be trusted to wield the power of creation. For knowledge without balance leads to destruction, and destruction, inevitably, to reset. But the secrecy that once protected knowledge may also have trapped it. Over time, as priesthoods became institutions, mystery became dogma. Symbols turned into idols, and meaning was lost. What began as a living science of cosmic harmony devolved into ritual and superstition. In this sense, humanity did not just forget because of catastrophe. It forgot because it turned wisdom into religion. The clearest example lies in the transition from ancient Egypt to early Christianity. The temples of Heliopolis and Hermopolis once taught a cosmology based on light, vibration, and the geometry of creation. The Heka, or sacred word, through which the universe was spoken into being. Later, these teachings were simplified, rebranded, and moralized. The Logos became the Word of God. The cyclical became linear. The soul's journey through rebirth was replaced with judgment and salvation. And with that shift, the knowledge that time itself repeats, that civilizations rise and fall in accordance with cosmic law, was deliberately obscured. If this suppression was intentional, then perhaps it served a purpose: to keep humanity from remembering how to escape the cycle. For to escape it would require remembering everything, not only the glory of lost ages, but the mistakes that destroyed them. True memory carries responsibility. It demands that we face ourselves without illusion. And perhaps that is precisely what humanity has never been ready to do. Every great civilization, at its peak, reflects a mirror image of our current world. The Atlanteans, according to Plato, grew corrupt as their power over nature expanded. The Sumerians, masters of irrigation and astronomy, lost their gods to empire and bureaucracy. The Maya, whose calendar mapped cosmic time with perfect accuracy, turned their precision toward blood and sacrifice. Even Rome, inheritor of Greek rationalism, succumbed to decadence and division. In each case, technological mastery outpaced moral evolution. The balance between creation and consciousness collapsed, and with it, the world. Could it be that the resets are not punishments, but self-corrections? That humanity unconsciously destroys itself when it exceeds its spiritual maturity? Nature, after all, tolerates no imbalance. When systems grow unstable, they collapse into new order. Perhaps civilization is no different, a collective organism whose survival depends on equilibrium between knowledge and wisdom. If this is true, then the cycle of resets is not merely imposed upon us, it is generated from within us. We are both the builders and the destroyers, the students and the saboteurs of our own evolution. But there remains another layer, one that feels both metaphysical and scientific. What if the cycle is embedded not just in culture, but in consciousness itself? Modern neuroscience reveals that memory is not stored as static data, but as dynamic patterns, ever rewritten, ever changing. Collective memory may behave the same way. When enough individuals forget, reality itself shifts to reflect that forgetting. History, after all, is not just what happened, but what is agreed upon. The timeline becomes a consensus hallucination, and the deeper truth fades into legend. Could humanity, through collective denial, literally erase its own past from the field of reality? Quantum physics hints at such possibilities. Observer effect, entanglement, the malleability of time all suggest that consciousness shapes the world it perceives. If entire civilizations once possessed this understanding, their mastery over matter and mind would have seemed godlike. But mastery without humility might have fractured the very fabric of space and time, necessitating a reset not only of society, but of memory itself. And so, perhaps after each great fall, the universe restores balance by wiping the slate clean, a cosmic amnesia encoded into the DNA of consciousness. Yet traces remain, flickering like static between frequencies. Dreams, déjà vu, inexplicable intuition. These may be echoes of prior worlds bleeding into our perception. The fascination with lost civilizations, ancient aliens, and apocalypse myths may not be coincidence. It may be memory trying to reassemble itself. The very urge to rediscover the past, to dig, to question, to doubt official history, could be the mechanism by which consciousness begins to break the cycle. If so, the real battle is not against catastrophe, but against forgetting. Consider the digital age, humanity's first attempt to externalize total memory. The Internet is our modern Akashic record, a networked consciousness archiving everything, yet it too is fragile. One solar flare, one blackout, and centuries of data vanish. Worse, information overload mirrors the same paradox of the ancient resets: infinite knowledge, zero understanding. Like the Library of Alexandria reborn in silicon, it risks becoming another Tower of Babel, collapsing under its own noise. Still, within this chaos lies potential. Never before has memory been so accessible. Never before has humanity stood so close to seeing its reflection across millennia. But the question remains: will we use this connection to remember or to distract ourselves until the next collapse? Perhaps the ancients faced this very choice. Their temples, pyramids, and myths were not just monuments. They were memory devices. Every stone aligned to the heavens, every symbol encoded with knowledge meant to survive the flood. The architects of those ages knew that history would repeat, that we would one day walk among their ruins and ask the same questions they once asked. They built for us, for the future forgetters. And now, as we decipher their messages, we stand at the same threshold they once faced. The cycle is turning again. The signs multiply: climate extremes, technological singularities, societal fracturing, spiritual exhaustion. The conditions that ended past ages are converging once more. Whether through cosmic coincidence or hidden design, the pattern continues. The wheel turns. But if the key to breaking the cycle is memory, then remembering must mean more than knowledge. It must mean awakening, the union of intellect and awareness, of science and soul. It means understanding that we are not the first, but perhaps we could be the last, the generation that learns from the ruins rather than repeating them. And yet, even that hope carries a shadow. For what if remembering itself is the trigger? What if each civilization that rediscovers its true past becomes the cause of its next destruction, like a computer looping into overload when it recalls too much data at once? The paradox deepens. To escape the cycle, we must remember, but to remember too much may destroy us. That is the knife edge on which humanity now stands. The ancients might have stood here once, too, staring at the same sky, feeling the same unease before the storm. Perhaps they, too, thought they were different. Perhaps they believed they would break the loop. And perhaps they left us these words, not as prophecy, but as memory. You will rise and you will fall until you learn to remember without fear. But can we? The silence between worlds waits for our answer. The further we trace the echoes of lost civilizations, the clearer the pattern becomes. Not a chain of random collapses, but an orchestrated rhythm that has guided humanity through millennia. Like tides pulled by an unseen moon, each rise and fall seems governed by laws we have forgotten. It is as if history is not merely repeating itself, but being conducted. The same signs appear before every reset: rapid technological advancement, spiritual decline, social disintegration, and a deepening alienation from the natural world. The ancients warned of this rhythm, calling it the turning of the age. But they also left clues suggesting that the cycle can be broken, not by escaping catastrophe, but by transcending the consciousness that perpetuates it. To see how, one must return to the oldest teachers of all, the myths themselves. They are not simply stories, they are maps of human evolution. Hidden within them lies a psychology of the species, an encrypted record of what happens when humanity forgets its origins. Take, for example, the myth of the flood, present in more than 600 cultures worldwide. It is always the same. Humankind grows proud, defies divine law, masters forces beyond control, and is wiped clean by water or fire. Yet always, A remnant survives, chosen, enlightened, destined to rebuild. This archetype is more than moral allegory. It describes a process of purification, a forced renewal when consciousness stagnates. The flood is both literal and symbolic, a surge of destruction that washes away what can no longer evolve. Modern psychology might call this a collective death and rebirth. The Jungian archetype of apocalypse represents the destruction of outdated patterns within the human psyche. In this view, the world does not end because the gods are angry. It ends because consciousness demands renewal. Civilizations are external projections of inner states. When collective consciousness becomes corrupt, when greed, control, and fear dominate, the outer world mirrors that decay. Earth responds as a living organism, restoring equilibrium through disaster. In mythic language, the gods cleanse the world. In scientific terms, entropy resets the system. Yet what if both are true? What if consciousness and nature are not separate, but intertwined within a feedback loop, each influencing the other? Ancient wisdom traditions alluded to this unity. The Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without, encapsulates it. In Vedic philosophy, the universe is Maya, a mirror of the mind. The Egyptians believed that Mayat, cosmic order, depended on human virtue. When balance was broken, the Nile itself turned against them. Perhaps the resets occur because humanity repeatedly forgets this connection. We believe ourselves masters of nature, not participants in it, and in that illusion, we sow the seeds of collapse. But deeper still lies a question. If consciousness shapes history, who or what shapes consciousness? Many traditions speak of hidden forces guiding human evolution, not divine in the moral sense, but cosmic, neutral, and cyclical. The Gnostics called them eons, great emanations of light and shadow that shape the destiny of worlds. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki, beings who descended to fashion mankind for service, then withdrew, leaving fragments of their knowledge behind. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, celestial entities who taught forbidden arts to humans, precipitating both enlightenment and catastrophe. Whether symbolic or literal, these accounts converge on one idea. Humanity's evolution was not spontaneous, it was initiated. If these entities were real, whether gods, extraterrestrials, or archetypal energies, then perhaps they are also the architects of the cycle itself. Imagine a civilization of immense intelligence overseeing humanity as gardeners oversee crops. Each time the garden overgrows or withers, they prune and replant. Floods, fires, and resets become tools of cultivation. In this framework, history is not chaos but management, the controlled evolution of a species within parameters. This notion may sound like myth, yet it mirrors our own behavior toward nature. Humanity conducts genetic engineering, ecological restoration, even simulated environments for research. We are learning to create and reset entire systems. What if we are imitating our own makers, following a pattern encoded deep in memory? Even our religions echo this cosmic management. The Abrahamic God who floods the earth, the Hindu Vishnu who ends and renews the yugas, the Hopi prophecy of successive worlds destroyed by fire and water. Each describes a supervisor, a force maintaining cosmic balance through destruction. Perhaps the ancients were not inventing gods, but describing recurring interventions by intelligences that watch from beyond time. Skeptics argue that such theories overestimate humanity's significance. The universe, they say, is indifferent. Yet the precision of the cycle suggests otherwise. The geological and historical record shows resets occurring with eerie regularity, around every 10,000 to 13,000 years, matching precessional half-cycles and orbital shifts. The last great cataclysm, at the end of the Pleistocene, aligns with this rhythm. Now, thousands of years later, the signs repeat. Magnetic field weakening, poles shifting, rising temperatures, mass extinction. Coincidence or recurrence? Some physicists now explore the idea of cosmological recurrence, the universe endlessly rebooting itself in infinite variations. Others study the holographic principle, where all information in the universe is preserved and projected in patterns across dimensions. If reality is holographic, then history may be too, repeating as a fractal pattern, slightly different each time, but governed by the same equations. In this sense, humanity is not imprisoned. It is learning through repetition, refining consciousness as the universe refines itself. But repetition without remembrance becomes stagnation. Without awareness, each cycle becomes another turn of the wheel, another lost civilization, another buried truth. The ancients may have understood this. In the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece, initiates enacted death and rebirth to achieve anamnesis, the recovery of divine memory. The goal was not immortality of the body, but continuity of the soul's awareness through cycles. To remember, they said, is to awaken. Perhaps this is the secret hidden in plain sight. The way to end the cycle is to remember through it. That remembrance begins with pattern recognition. The ancients encoded their knowledge in geometry, the one language immune to corruption. Circles, spirals, and ratios appear in monuments across millennia because they are reflections of universal law. The Great Pyramid's geometry mirrors the Earth's curvature and orbital ratios. Stonehenge maps lunar cycles. Angkor Wat encodes the precession of the equinoxes. These are not coincidences, but continuity, an unbroken thread of remembrance stretching through the ages. Each monument is a node in the planetary memory network, designed to speak across time to those who can read its code. Modern science is only beginning to rediscover this code through the study of resonance, frequency, and vibration. Everything in the universe, from atoms to galaxies, oscillates. Frequency creates form. The ancients knew this intuitively. They built temples as instruments, tuning forks of stone that harmonized with Earth's energy fields. When those structures fell silent, so did our connection to the planet. The reset may have been as much vibrational as physical, a global detuning of consciousness from its natural frequency. If the fall of civilizations is a loss of resonance, then remembering means retuning. Humanity must rediscover the harmony between consciousness, nature, and the cosmos. The ancients called this harmony the music of the spheres. Modern physicists call it the unified field. It is the same truth in different language, that separation is illusion, and that when awareness returns to unity, the cycle dissolves. Yet unity cannot be imposed, it must be awakened. And awakening often requires crisis. Destruction, then, becomes initiation, a cosmic rite pushing consciousness to evolve. Perhaps every reset is not failure, but opportunity. Each catastrophe a threshold between ignorance and understanding. The question is whether humanity can cross that threshold consciously without annihilation. We stand at such a threshold now. The signs of renewal are as present as the signs of collapse. Technologies that once isolated us now connect minds across the globe. Scientific inquiry begins to touch the mystical once more. Quantum entanglement mirrors ancient ideas of interconnectedness. Neural networks resemble the web of life. Humanity, like an initiate before initiation, trembles on the edge of remembrance. But awakening is not guaranteed. Just as in the myths, knowledge can save or destroy. Artificial intelligence, genetic manipulation, climate engineering. These are our modern versions of the forbidden arts, once taught by the Watchers. Whether they elevate or erase us depends on whether we wield them with awareness or arrogance. The pattern warns us. Every civilization that sought godlike power without godlike wisdom met the same fate. Perhaps the Watchers still observe, waiting to see whether this time will be different. Or perhaps the guardians are within us, the silent voices of memory urging balance before the next flood. When ancient myths speak of judgment, they may not refer to divine punishment, but to natural consequence, the law of resonance itself. What we create vibrates outward, shaping the world in our image. If fear dominates, the world becomes chaotic. If awareness expands, harmony returns. This is not philosophy, but physics of consciousness. The next reset, then, may not come from the sky, but from within the human field. And so the question remains, can humanity remember before forgetting again? Can we become conscious participants in the cycle rather than its victims? The answer, perhaps, lies not in grand monuments or cosmic alignments, but in something quiet, the recognition that we are the cycle, that the same intelligence guiding the stars moves within our own breath. To remember this is to end the illusion of separation, and with it, the need for destruction. If history has been a wheel, then awareness is the still point at its center. From that stillness, the motion stops. The spiral becomes a line. The circle becomes a path. Maybe that is what the ancients meant when they spoke of ascending to the next world, not escaping Earth, but transcending repetition through remembrance. The next reset, then, will not be of stone or fire, but of consciousness itself. And if humanity can endure that awakening without fear, perhaps, for the first time in our long-forgotten history, the cycle will finally end. There is a strange and persistent feeling buried deep in the human soul, the quiet certainty that something has happened before. That déjà vu which flickers not just in moments, but in civilizations. A sense that our technologies, our wars, our architectures, our faiths, all mirror forgotten epochs. It is as if the collective mind carries the memory of entire worlds, resurfacing like dreams. In ancient times, they called this memory the first knowledge, the awareness that humanity once knew who it was and where it came from, before the flood of forgetting swept it away. Perhaps that memory is returning. Across the world, evidence of lost sophistication continues to surface, defying the linear story of progress. In 1996, marine archaeologists off the coast of India discovered the sunken ruins of Dwarka, a city described in Hindu texts as built by the god Krishna himself. Sonar scans revealed symmetrical streets, stone walls, and artifacts carbon-dated to over 9,000 years old. Such a date rewrites history, predating Egypt, Sumer, and China. Yet the discovery was quietly buried under academic debate, its implications too vast to absorb. Similar ruins have been found near Cuba's coast, 2,000 feet underwater, colossal geometric structures that could not have formed naturally. The ocean seems to hold the memory of a world that drowned, and with it, the evidence of a reset so complete that we only now glimpse its edges. What's more intriguing is that these ruins often share geometry, proportions, and alignments found across continents. The same mathematical codes that appear in Egypt's pyramids appear in Mexico's Teotihuacan and in Angkor's temple complexes. They align with solstices, star paths, and even with each other, as if coordinated by a single planetary intelligence. How could isolated ancient cultures, separated by oceans, have built with identical principles, unless they were inheriting the same legacy from a pre-cataclysmic source? If there was once a global civilization, a mother culture, it must have operated on principles lost to modern understanding. The ancients seemed obsessed not with consumption or conquest, but with harmony. Their architecture merged with the landscape, their myths synchronized with the heavens. Every temple was a reflection of cosmic order, every ritual a dialogue between earth and sky. Their science was sacred because it recognized no separation between the physical and the spiritual. Perhaps this was the very knowledge that led to their downfall, the understanding that consciousness and matter are one, a truth too powerful, too uncontrollable for a species not yet ready to wield it. And so, the cycle turned. The flood, the fire, the forgetting, each came not as punishment, but as consequence. The knowledge that could bridge heaven and earth became myth, encoded into allegory to protect it from misuse. In Egypt, it survived as the wisdom of Thoth, in Greece as the mysteries of Hermes, in Sumer as the laws of Enki. In the East, it became the Tao, the balance of opposites, all pointed to the same principle. When humanity breaks its harmony with the cosmos, nature itself resets the equilibrium. But harmony requires memory, and memory requires truth. Today, the same imbalance grows again. Our machines orbit the planet, our data flows like blood through invisible veins, our cities glow like constellations. Yet beneath this brilliance, dissonance hums. Humanity has built towers to the sky once more, not of stone, but of signal. The old myths echo. The Tower of Babel, the hubris of Atlantis, the fall of the Watchers. We are repeating the gestures of gods, playing with forces we barely comprehend, quantum fields, artificial intelligence, genetic code. Each discovery expands our reach and deepens our amnesia. We build faster than we understand, and like every age before, we mistake power for progress. If consciousness shapes reality, as ancient wisdom and quantum science both suggest, then our collective state of mind determines the fate of our world. Fear, greed, and division produce chaos. Unity and awareness produce harmony. The great resets may not be random at all. They may be the Earth's immune response to human dissonance. When the frequency of civilization grows unstable, the system reboots to restore coherence. Floods and fires are only the physical expressions of this metaphysical correction. The ancients knew this, which is why they built according to vibration, number, and proportion. They sought to maintain resonance with the cosmos. And we, in our noise, our speed, our arrogance, have fallen out of tune once more. The question that haunts every thinker of this age is not whether the cycle will repeat, but whether we will finally recognize it in time to alter its course. Perhaps the first step toward remembering is to admit how much we have forgotten. History's great discontinuities reveal themselves not only in stone, but in language. The oldest tongues, Sumerian, Sanskrit, Mayan, Egyptian, all describe time as cyclical. Words for beginning and end often share roots. In contrast, modern languages frame time as a straight line, from primitive past to advanced future. This linguistic shift reflects a deeper delusion, the belief that humanity is separate from the cycles of nature. The ancients, who saw themselves as participants in a living cosmos, may have preserved wisdom we now call superstition. Our progress has been purchased at the cost of perspective. And so we face the same test they once faced, whether to awaken or to collapse. Some traditions claim that within every great cycle there exists a brief window, a crossing point when humanity can transcend the spiral. In the Mayan calendar, this was called Baktun's turning. In Hindu cosmology, it is the dawn of Satya Yuga, the return of truth. In Western esotericism, it is the alchemical wedding, the fusion of matter and spirit. Each describes a moment when consciousness can evolve fast enough to outpace destruction. But to do so, humanity must remember not just intellectually, but experientially, to feel again that we are woven into the universe, that awakening is already stirring in quiet places. Scientists speak of morphic resonance and zero-point energy. Mystics speak of planetary ascension. Environmentalists speak of rewilding consciousness. Though the language differs, the impulse is the same: to restore balance. Perhaps this is the true purpose of the reset: to force remembrance through crisis, to push the species toward unity through the pressure of survival. The question is whether we can reach that unity before the next deluge. It may already be happening. Around the world, individuals report shifts in perception, synchronicities, heightened empathy, the breakdown of rigid belief systems. Ancient prophecies spoke of such an awakening. The Hopi called it the time when the blue star would appear, heralding purification. The Andean Pachacuti describes an inversion of worlds, the old collapsing, the new emerging. Even our technologies reflect the metaphor: networks mirroring neural webs, artificial minds reflecting our own evolution toward self-awareness. We are becoming planetary, perhaps even cosmic in scope. The next civilization may not be defined by monuments of stone, but by a consciousness capable of sustaining knowledge without losing balance. Yet with awakening comes risk. Each time humanity has glimpsed its divine nature, it has flirted with self-destruction. The Atlanteans harnessed energies they could not contain. The builders of Babel tried to reach the heavens and were scattered. Even in modern times, the discovery of the atom, knowledge of creation's essence, led immediately to the bomb. Awareness without integration breeds annihilation. So perhaps the true initiation of our species is not about learning more, but remembering how to be. The ancients called this gnosis, direct knowing, beyond words and dogma. It is the silent recognition of unity with all that exists. In that state, there is no need for control, because one sees that nothing is separate. If such awareness were to spread widely enough, it could dissolve the very pattern of destruction. Consciousness itself could stabilize the field, preventing the collapse. The question is, can enough of us awaken before the wheel turns again? If the cycle has always been about evolution through crisis, then perhaps the final stage of that evolution is consciousness becoming self-aware on a planetary scale. Humanity recognizing itself as one organism, inseparable from Earth, from cosmos, from time. When that happens, there will be no need for external resets. We will no longer require catastrophe to remember who we are. But until that day, the old forces remain. The inertia of ignorance, the systems built on control, the shadow that resists awakening. The watchers, whether real or symbolic, still observe, waiting to see which direction we will choose. Some believe they will intervene if we near extinction. Others believe they already have, subtly steering us through inspiration and synchronicity. Either way, the decision rests with us. The cycle does not demand destruction. It offers opportunity. What we call apocalypse may not mean the end of the world, but rather the unveiling, from the Greek apocalypsis, revelation. The moment when the veil of forgetting lifts and truth floods in. It is not destruction, but disclosure, the remembering of all that was hidden. The ancients described it not as punishment, but as illumination, a sudden dawning of collective awareness. Perhaps that moment is closer than we think. Perhaps the next reset will not erase us, but awaken us. Yet even now, as the winds grow strange and the seas rise again, the same silence waits beneath it all, the eternal pause between breaths, between cycles. In that silence, one question echoes across the ages. Will this be another forgetting, or the first true remembering? The answer will not come from the stars, but from within. For it is not the gods who turn the wheel of history. It is us. And if we listen closely enough, we may hear the ancient whisper carried on the wind from ruins half buried and dreams half remembered. You have done this before. Do it differently this time. If humanity is indeed living through the echo of countless forgotten ages, then the question is no longer whether another reset will come, but how it will unfold, and whether we will awaken before it happens. Every collapse in history has been preceded by warning signs that most ignored: shifting climates, vanishing species, collapsing empires, and the slow corrosion of meaning itself. Today, we are surrounded by all of them. Yet in our arrogance, we call it progress. Perhaps the final illusion of every civilization before its fall is that it believes it is the first to truly conquer time. The ancients spoke of the end of cycles not as singular events, but as convergences. Forces, cosmic, social, spiritual, align until the pressure becomes unbearable. The Mayans marked it with calendars. The Hindus measured it with yugas. The Greeks called it ekpyrosis, the purging fire that renews the world. In science, the same truth appears as entropy, the law that every system, left unchecked, collapses into chaos before reorganizing into new order. The reset, then, may not be destruction at all, but metamorphosis. Yet the process is violent, and few ever live to witness what emerges on the other side. Modern humanity stands again at such a precipice. The signs are not carved in stone, but coded in data. Magnetic poles drift faster than ever recorded. Global temperature swings defy prediction. The Schumann resonance, the Earth's heartbeat, fluctuates unpredictably. Ancient prophecies warned that when the planet's pulse changes, so too does human consciousness. Science now confirms that the brain's electrical frequencies align with Earth's magnetic field. If that field shifts, our minds, and perhaps our reality itself, shift with it. Could this be the true engine of the resets? Not external catastrophe, but shifts in the energetic structure of the world that rewrite the consciousness of those who survive? The evidence lies in the myths that follow every flood, sudden leaps in intelligence, language, and creativity. After the Younger Dryas cataclysm, human art and architecture blossomed as if a new mind had entered the species. It was not just survival, it was transformation. Some modern thinkers call this punctuated evolution, periods of stasis interrupted by bursts of change. But what triggers those bursts? Could consciousness itself be subjected to periodic upgrades driven by cosmic forces beyond comprehension? Every few millennia, perhaps the planet resets not to punish humanity, but to evolve it, to shift awareness to a higher frequency, forcing adaptation through ordeal. If so, we are not victims of history, but participants in a cosmic curriculum. And yet, evolution always carries loss. The knowledge of one age seldom survives the birth of the next. What remains becomes myth, fossilized in memory and stone. The survivors, those who cross between worlds, are often remembered as gods, demigods, or bringers of light. They rebuild, teaching fragments of the old science to the new humanity. In Sumer, they were the Apkallu. In Egypt, the Shemsu Hor. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl. In Greece, Prometheus. In every myth, they are punished for giving humanity too much. Fire, light, wisdom, all metaphors for memory. Perhaps these myths describe not divine rebellion, but the act of remembering across resets. Those who carry knowledge from one world to another become outcasts in the new one, haunted by memory in a world that insists on forgetting. And maybe somewhere in our DNA, we are their descendants. Modern genetics holds a strange clue. Around 70,000 years ago, humanity experienced a bottleneck. Our population shrank to a few thousand. Yet afterward, our brains grew rapidly, language exploded, and symbolic thought appeared. No one knows why. Some say it was mutation, others whisper of intervention. Whatever happened, it was a reset of evolution itself, a leap that changed everything. Could such leaps happen again, triggered by environmental or cosmic conditions? If each cycle brings a new version of humanity, then we are not repeating history identically, but ascending through it, iteration by iteration. Still, ascension demands remembering. For each reset erases not only knowledge, but identity. The memory of who we are dissolves until we no longer recognize ourselves as part of the greater whole. The ancients fought this forgetting through myth and ritual. They built monuments aligned to the stars so that, when the skies changed, future generations could reorient themselves. They encoded their understanding of time into calendars, not to predict the end, but to remind the survivors when it would begin again. We, too, are leaving records, data vaults, seed banks, digital archives. But if electricity fails, if memory becomes dust, who will decipher our language of code? Who will remember that we once reached for the stars? Perhaps that is the cruelest aspect of the cycle, that no civilization truly dies. It simply forgets what it was. To the survivors of the next age, our satellites may appear as wandering stars, our cities as mythic ruins. They will find fragments of steel and glass, and they will wonder who built them. They will call us gods or demons. They will try to rebuild, as we always have. And in their dreams, faint echoes of our world will return, just as our ancestors once dreamed of the shining cities before the flood. Memory, it seems, never vanishes completely. It hides in the collective unconscious, waiting for conditions to awaken it again. That awakening may already be happening. People across the world report a strange nostalgia for places they've never been, civilizations they've never studied. They feel drawn to ancient symbols, to star maps, to the sound of lost languages. It is as though the soul itself remembers what the mind has forgotten. Psychologists call it archetypal memory. Mystics call it the awakening of the ancient self. Either way, something in us is stirring. Perhaps the cycle's purpose is not endless repetition, but cumulative remembrance, the slow reassembly of a shattered cosmic memory through countless lifetimes and civilizations. And yet, the guardians of forgetting still linger. Power structures built on control resist awakening, for their existence depends on amnesia. Every system of domination, religious, political, technological, relies on humanity's blindness to its own divinity. If we remembered our origin, their authority would dissolve. This is why history is constantly rewritten, why truth is censored or ridiculed, why discovery is so often followed by suppression. The reset, whether natural or engineered, always serves both as destruction and as concealment. The question is, who benefits from our forgetting? Perhaps it is not an external who, but an internal aspect of ourselves, the shadow of consciousness that fears its own light. Humanity's collective ego, unable to face its responsibility as a creator, projects its fear outward. We invent gods and devils to carry what we cannot bear. The true enemy of remembrance, then, is not cosmic design or divine punishment. It is the human refusal to awaken. The reset is not imposed upon us. It is invoked by our own denial. Yet hope remains. Each age leaves a trail of breadcrumbs, and we are following them. Our rediscovery of ancient science, vibration, sacred geometry, consciousness as energy, marks the beginning of reawakening. We are piecing together what our ancestors knew, that the universe is alive, conscious, and participatory. If enough of humanity remembers this, the next cycle need not be violent. The reset could become transformation instead of catastrophe. Perhaps that is what the ancients meant by the return of light. Not a literal event, but a psychological shift, a remembrance so profound that it rewrites reality itself. When consciousness reaches critical mass, the system no longer requires destruction to evolve. The wheel stops spinning. Time becomes spiral, not circle. Humanity ascends, not escapes, but integrates the lessons of every forgotten age into one luminous continuity, and maybe, just maybe, that moment is near. All around us, paradoxes multiply. Chaos and clarity, collapse and innovation, despair and awakening. Old institutions crumble while new networks of consciousness form in their place. People begin to see through illusion, question authority, and sense the deeper currents moving beneath events. It is messy, chaotic, and often terrifying. But birth always is. The world we know may be dissolving, but something ancient and new is taking shape beneath it. What if the next reset has already begun, not through destruction, but through remembrance, not as apocalypse, but as disclosure? The old world cannot survive the return of memory. Once humanity remembers its divine nature, control becomes impossible, and fear loses its power. The cycle ends not with thunder, but with awareness. That may be why everything feels unstable, because consciousness itself is changing frequency. The ancients might have called this the dawn of the fifth sun, the end of Kali Yuga, the return of Zep Tepi, the reawakening of the first time. In their prophecies, it is always described not as the destruction of earth, but as the restoration of truth. When the veils fall, when memory returns, humanity will no longer need to seek gods, for it will recognize itself as part of the divine. And yet, one question still lingers like a shadow behind the light. Can remembrance exist without suffering? Can humanity evolve without collapse? Perhaps the cycle will not truly end until that lesson is learned. Until then, the pattern continues, though maybe this time not in ignorance. For if even a fraction of humanity awakens, the next world will begin differently. The flood may still come, but it will be met with understanding, not fear. The fire may still cleanse, but it will illuminate instead of consume. Perhaps that is the meaning behind the whisper left in every ancient ruin, carved into stone for those who would one day remember. You are the builders and the breakers, the memory and the forgetting. The cycle is you, and in that realization, the silence of countless ages begins to tremble, like the earth itself inhaling before dawn, as the stars above seem to pulse with an old, familiar rhythm. The same rhythm that began it all, the rhythm of remembering. Every civilization believes it stands at the pinnacle of history, yet every one of them has watched the horizon darken with the same signs: the slow unraveling of order, the return of ancient chaos disguised as progress. Ours is no different. The world glows with artificial light, humming with invisible networks that bind the planet into a single nervous system. We have conquered space, split the atom, and digitized the human voice. And yet, beneath all this brilliance, a subtle dread spreads, a feeling that something fundamental is failing, as if the heartbeat of civilization itself has begun to falter. Perhaps this unease is not new. Perhaps it is the ancient memory of endings, stirring again as another cycle nears completion. Patterns repeat because consciousness repeats them. Our ancestors might have known that civilizations do not collapse merely from external disaster, but from internal entropy, the gradual erosion of meaning. When a society forgets why it exists, when it replaces wisdom with data and reverence with control, it loses its equilibrium with the natural world. That is when the reset begins, long before the earthquakes or floods. The destruction we fear is only the final symptom of a spiritual disease. The fall begins quietly in the collective mind. In ancient myths, the apocalypse was never only physical, it was psychological. The Hopi described it as the breaking of connection between humans and earth. The Egyptians called it the second death, not of the body, but of memory. In modern times, we experience it as disassociation, as endless distraction, as an inability to feel what we are destroying. We are drowning not in water, but in noise. The flood of information has replaced the flood of myth. Yet it serves the same purpose: to wash away meaning so that a new consciousness can emerge. It is tempting to view this as tragedy. But what if collapse is simply the universe's way of forcing awakening? Evolution by pressure. Transformation through breakdown. Every reset in history may have been not an ending, but a recalibration of consciousness. When systems grow too rigid to adapt, they must be broken to evolve. The earth, the cosmos, and consciousness itself all operate under this law. Destruction and creation are not opposites. They are consecutive breaths of the same force. Consider the ancient builders who raised monuments that outlived their empires. The Great Pyramid, Angkor Wat, Tiwanaku, Machu Picchu, each built in stone meant to survive the flood. Why? Because they knew it would come. They understood that civilizations rise and fall, but truth endures if it is encoded in form. Geometry, resonance, alignment with the stars. These were not decorations. They were survival codes. The ancients did not build for the moment. They built for the memory. Every structure was a message to the future. You are not the first. Perhaps that is why modern humanity is obsessed with rediscovery. We feel the pull of these ruins not because they are mysterious, but because they are familiar. We are drawn to them as if visiting old homes. Somewhere deep in the collective unconscious, we know we have walked these paths before, built these temples, sung these hymns to forgotten gods. The attraction to lost worlds is the soul's instinct to remember, but remembering is dangerous, for it challenges everything. To recall that we have lived before, that civilizations have risen and fallen countless times, is to recognize that progress is an illusion. It means that the future we worship is only another echo of the past. It means that our obsession with advancement, our belief that technology, politics, or ideology will save us, is misplaced. The ancients understood what we have forgotten, that no invention can save a civilization whose consciousness is divided. The only true evolution is inner. This realization was the essence of mystery schools across the ancient world. The initiates of Egypt, Greece, and the East underwent symbolic death and rebirth to remember the unity of all things. The ceremony mirrored the cycle of civilization itself: descent into chaos, purification through darkness, rebirth into light. The initiate who emerged remembered what humanity always forgets, that the external world is a reflection of the internal. Change the consciousness, and the world transforms. Ignore it, and the world collapses to mirror your blindness. Perhaps that is why the ancients considered ignorance the greatest sin. Not moral ignorance, but cosmic ignorance, the forgetting of who we are. Every flood myth begins with that forgetting. Every tower that falls, every garden lost, begins with the illusion of separation. Humanity forgets that it is the caretaker, not the conqueror, of the world, and nature responds with balance. We are now witnessing that balance return. Climate shifts, ecosystem collapses, mass migrations, technological overload, all are manifestations of a world out of harmony with itself. They are not punishments, but reflections. The earth does not destroy us, it mirrors us. Our cities are our temples, our machines our deities. We worship efficiency and consume our own future, mistaking momentum for direction. It is a familiar story, told in every age, every fall. Yet within the ruins of those stories lies the seed of salvation. Awareness. Awareness changes everything. To observe a pattern is to begin to transcend it. Once we see the cycle, we can step outside its unconscious repetition. That is the beginning of freedom. The challenge, however, is remembering under pressure. As the signs intensify, fear grows, and fear is the tool of forgetting. Fear drives us to cling to systems already dying, to rebuild the old world instead of birthing the new. That is how every reset becomes repetition. The cycle feeds on our inability to release what no longer serves us. If we are to survive this turning, we must do what no previous civilization has done. Remember in the midst of collapse. We must hold awareness steady as the old world dissolves, neither denying the destruction nor surrendering to despair. The ancients encoded this wisdom in the myth of the phoenix. The bird burns itself to ash, yet from that ash rises the new. The fire is not the end, it is the initiation. Only by enduring it consciously can one be reborn whole. This time, perhaps, the fire will not be physical, but spiritual. Humanity's coming transformation may be one of perception, not annihilation. A collective shift in awareness so profound that it renders the old world obsolete. Technology and consciousness are converging. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and neural integration are redefining what it means to be human. If used unconsciously, these forces could enslave us further in illusion. But if guided by awareness, they could become tools for evolution, bridges to the unified consciousness our ancestors glimpsed in their myths. For the first time, we have the capacity to record everything, to preserve memory beyond decay. The digital archives we build, the satellites orbiting Earth, the genetic databases, all are the modern equivalent of the Great Pyramids, vessels of remembrance. Yet they will mean nothing if we do not preserve the wisdom to interpret them. Data is not memory. Memory is meaning. When meaning is lost, even the most advanced civilization becomes only another layer of sediment beneath the next. The question, then, is whether we can restore meaning before the reset completes. That meaning begins with humility, the recognition that we are not separate from the forces shaping us. We are the flood and the survivor, the fire and the seed. The universe does not punish, it teaches. Every collapse is a mirror reflecting what must change within consciousness. If we can see the pattern clearly, we can choose a different response. Instead of clinging to the old, we can surrender to transformation. Instead of resisting the storm, we can learn to move with it. Perhaps this is the hidden message within all apocalyptic prophecy. The end is not destruction. It is disclosure, the unveiling of truth. The veil lifts when consciousness is ready to see beyond illusion. That is the true Judgment Day. The moment when humanity sees itself without distortion. The catastrophe is not external. It is the confrontation with our own reflection. And maybe that confrontation has already begun. The anxiety that saturates modern life, the restlessness, the sense that something invisible is unraveling, is the first tremor of awakening. The system cracks not because it is failing, but because consciousness is outgrowing it. Just as a snake must shed its skin, humanity must release the structures that once defined it. The pain of the process is the birth of the next world. If this is true, then the greatest task before us is not survival, but remembrance. To carry awareness through the fire, to remain conscious while the illusion dissolves, that is how the cycle ends. Not by escaping the flood, but by understanding its purpose. Not by fearing the end, but by recognizing it as beginning. We have been here before. We have built and fallen, forgotten and rediscovered countless times. But perhaps this is the first time we can watch it happen and know what it is. The memory of ages sleeps within us, waiting to be awakened not by disaster, but by choice. For if consciousness is the author of the cycle, it can also be its conclusion. The moment humanity remembers that truth, the pattern breaks. History, finally, becomes evolution. And when that happens, there will be no need for temples or pyramids, no more warnings carved in stone. the memory will live not in ruins, but in the hearts of those who remember. For the true end of the cycle is not silence or ruin, it is understanding. And perhaps when the last storm fades and the sky clears once more, a new humanity will stand among the remnants of the old, not asking, "What happened?" but whispering, with quiet certainty, "We finally remembered." If history is a mirror, then the reflection we see now is both hauntingly familiar and utterly new. Humanity stands at the threshold once more, between forgetting and remembering, between collapse and awakening. The signs are unmistakable, though many still look away. Storms grow more violent, temperatures swing beyond prediction, ancient ice melts to reveal long-buried secrets. The earth seems to breathe heavier with each passing year, as if preparing for something inevitable, a renewal that our ancestors called both destruction and rebirth. And as before, humanity moves toward it, blindfolded by pride, mistaking warning for noise and prophecy for paranoia. Yet beneath this turbulence, another current stirs. Quietly, invisibly, the consciousness of the species is shifting. People awaken in small ways, not to fear, but to the realization that everything is connected, thought to matter, mind to planet, human to cosmos. The same truth that once animated ancient temples now hums through our technology. We have built a digital nervous system that mirrors the brain itself, connected by light, pulsing with information. The irony is profound. We are recreating, through machines, the very web of consciousness that the ancients once perceived without them. Perhaps this is evolution's way of forcing us to remember, through reflection, through imitation, through the rediscovery of unity. But every leap forward comes with a shadow. The more interconnected the world becomes, the more fragile it grows. Systems built on illusion crumble under their own complexity. Economies, ecosystems, technologies, all pulse to the same accelerating rhythm, and acceleration cannot continue forever. The ancients might have described this moment as the turning of the wheel, the precise instant before the Great Reset, the tension between what must end and what longs to begin, the breath held between destruction and creation. What makes this cycle different is that, for the first time, humanity possesses the knowledge to see it coming. We understand geology, astronomy, genetics, and the deep timelines of planetary change. We can model collapse and measure consequence. And yet, knowledge alone has not saved us, because knowing is not remembering. Knowledge is external, remembrance is internal. It is the difference between studying light and becoming it. The civilizations before us may have known this distinction. Their downfall was not ignorance, but imbalance, an excess of mastery without wisdom, of intellect without spirit. That imbalance has returned. We manipulate atoms, genomes, and consciousness itself, but we remain spiritually adolescent. We invent gods of silicon, train algorithms to predict desire, and call it progress. Yet the core question, who are we and why are we here, remains unanswered. It is this question that the cycle demands we face. For until we remember, the resets will continue. There is a hidden mercy in this repetition. Each collapse, however brutal, clears the ground for renewal. The flood is nature's way of restoring balance. The fire, the quake, the silence after, all serve to erase what can no longer evolve. The ancients understood this as the rhythm of the cosmos, the eternal dance of creation and dissolution. In Hindu cosmology, even gods are bound by it. In Norse myth, Ragnarok is followed by rebirth. In the Hopi prophecies, after the fourth world falls, the fifth begins. Always, destruction precedes awakening. But this time, something is changing. Consciousness itself is accelerating, spreading faster than collapse. Perhaps for the first time, the awakening may outpace the destruction. Look around, and you can feel it. People everywhere are questioning the stories they were taught. They sense the hollowness behind power, the falseness in progress defined by profit. The same intuition that once drove prophets and shamans now emerges in scientists, artists, and ordinary seekers. The language differs, but the message is the same. The world is alive, and we are part of it. Consciousness is not limited to the human mind. It is the field in which we all exist. When enough people remember this truth, the pattern can shift. This, perhaps, is the real meaning of prophecy, not prediction, but potential. The ancients saw the cycles not as destiny, but as choice. Each age offered humanity the chance to transcend itself or to fall again. The flood was never punishment, it was purification. The apocalypse was never the end, it was revelation. In every sacred text, after the storm, a rainbow appears, symbol of covenant, of memory restored. But remembering is not easy. It demands the courage to face what we have denied. Our role in the cycle, our complicity in forgetting. To remember is to accept that we are not victims of nature or gods or fate, but co-creators of every outcome. This realization terrifies those who build their power on control, for awakening shatters hierarchy. When humanity remembers its own divinity, empires collapse not by rebellion, but by irrelevance. Control depends on amnesia. Awareness is the revolution that requires no war. The old systems sense this and fight to maintain the illusion. Media manipulates perception. Institutions rewrite history. Algorithms shape thought. But the truth moves quietly, like water through stone. It seeps through dreams, through art, through the subtle resonance of awakening minds. You can feel it when standing among ruins, when looking at the night sky, that strange recognition that none of this is truly new, that we have lived this before, and we are being asked to choose differently this time. If consciousness drives the cycle, then the true battlefield is within. The apocalypse begins not in cities but in hearts, the war between remembrance and denial, between unity and separation. Every act of compassion, every moment of awareness pushes the balance toward awakening. Every act of fear sustains the illusion. The fate of the world is not determined by gods or catastrophes, but by the collective resonance of the human spirit. Some scientists now speak of a critical mass, a tipping point in social systems where, once enough individuals change perception, the entire structure transforms spontaneously. This mirrors the ancient idea of the 100th monkey, or the Buddhist concept of collective enlightenment. Once a certain threshold of awareness is reached, consciousness reorganizes itself. Perhaps this is how the cycle truly ends. Not through destruction, but through synchronization. Humanity vibrating in harmony with the cosmos once more. To reach that threshold, however, we must first pass through the shadow. Every initiation requires descent before ascent. The darkness now spreading across the world, the violence, division, apathy, is the collective shadow surfacing for purification. We cannot transcend what we refuse to face. The old world must die, not because it is evil, but because it has fulfilled its purpose. The collapse is not failure, It is graduation. The ancients left us a map for this passage. It is found in myth, in stone, and in silence. The labyrinth, symbol of every journey inward, appears across cultures, from Crete to Peru. To walk it is to spiral into darkness, to meet the Minotaur, the beast within, and to emerge reborn. Civilization itself follows the same pattern: descent, confrontation, rebirth. We are deep within that labyrinth now. The Minotaur takes many forms: fear, division, materialism, despair. But at the center, if we have the courage to see it, lies not a monster but a mirror. When humanity looks into that mirror and remembers that the beast and the god are one, the labyrinth dissolves. The exit is not forward or backward, it is awareness itself. The moment we recognize that the cycle exists because we believe in separation, the illusion collapses, the reset ends, the age of forgetting closes. Perhaps that is the true apocalypse, not fire or flood, but awakening. The Greek root of the word means to uncover. What is uncovered is not the end, but the truth, that we are eternal beings playing in the theater of time, learning through cycles until we remember the script. And so, as this age nears its turning, we face a choice older than history. We can resist and repeat, or awaken and evolve. The signs around us, the storms, the data, the silence of the stars, are not threats but invitations. They ask us to remember. They ask us to become conscious participants in creation rather than passive subjects of fate. The ancients believed that at the dawn of each new world, a song is sung, a vibration that reawakens memory in those who hear it. Perhaps that song has begun again. You can feel it in moments of stillness, when the noise fades and the pulse of the earth rises in your chest. It is the same rhythm that built the pyramids, that guided the builders of forgotten ages, that whispers in our dreams. You are the memory of all that came before. When enough of us hear that song, the cycle will break, not through cataclysm, but through resonance. The world will shift, not by force, but by remembrance. And then, perhaps for the first time in all of history's long spiral, humanity will awaken into a world it doesn't need to rebuild, because it will finally remember how to live in harmony with what was never lost. Because this time, when the dawn arrives, we will not forget. At the edge of history, where memory and prophecy become one, humanity stands before the mirror of its own creation. Everything that has happened, every rise and fall, every flood and fire, every forgotten empire has led here, to this threshold. The pattern is unmistakable. Civilizations bloom, ascend, then devour themselves. Yet for the first time, we can see the wheel turning. We can recognize the rhythm. And recognition, perhaps, is the beginning of liberation. The ancients may have called this moment the return of the first time, Zep Tepi, the resetting of the cosmic clock when memory and creation align. But unlike the civilizations before us, we are aware of the pattern as it unfolds. We hold within our grasp the entire archive of human knowledge, accessible at a thought. We can look back tens of thousands of years and see ourselves reflected in the eyes of every lost world. This is both our gift and our trial, to remember without being consumed by what we remember. The cycle, after all, was never about destruction. It was about awakening through repetition. Each fall stripped away illusion. Each rebirth offered another chance to learn. What we have called punishment was always instruction. The earth teaches through change. The cosmos instructs through rhythm. Every collapse was the universe whispering, "Not yet, try again." But now something different stirs. Humanity is not simply repeating. The pace of memory is quickening, as if consciousness itself is converging toward clarity. In ancient times, remembering took generations. Myths traveled by voice and symbol, fragile and slow. Today, knowledge moves at light speed. A thought born in one mind can circle the planet in seconds. The boundaries between cultures, between belief systems, between myth and science, all dissolve in the vast ocean of connection. What once required centuries of evolution can now occur in a single lifetime. The spiral of time tightens, and at its center, awareness begins to awaken. And yet, awakening is not gentle. It comes through crisis, the same way a storm clears the sky. The old structures tremble, governments, religions, economies, for they were built upon the illusion of separation. As that illusion fades, they lose coherence. But collapse is not chaos, it is reorganization. It is the necessary breakdown of what no longer serves. The challenge for humanity is not to resist the storm, but to remember through it, to stay awake as the world forgets its old form. The ancients foresaw this. In nearly every culture's prophecy, there is a moment when the veil thins, when humanity must choose between remembering and repeating. The Maya called it the crossing of ages. The Hindus called it the dawn after Kali Yuga. The Hopi described it as the great purification, when the world would be remade by the consciousness of those who remembered harmony. These were not predictions of doom, but of opportunity. They understood that cycles end not when the earth is destroyed, but when consciousness evolves. We are now living that moment. The cycle has brought us to the point where the next reset doesn't have to be physical. It can be spiritual. The destruction this time may not come from the heavens, but from within. The death of illusion, the collapse of the false self. Humanity's greatest challenge is to surrender the identity built on control, separation, and fear, and to rediscover what it has always been. A single, unified field of awareness expressing itself through countless forms. To see this truth is to understand why the resets were ever needed. Each one was a mirror showing us what happens when creation forgets its source. When knowledge exceeds wisdom, when power eclipses empathy, the world fractures. The flood, the fire, the collapse, they are cosmic course corrections, bringing us back to balance. But balance does not have to come through suffering. It can come through remembrance. Remembrance begins not in temples or theories, but in stillness. The same silence that the mystics sought in deserts and mountaintops now waits within every human being. Beneath the noise of technology and fear, there is a frequency, subtle, steady, eternal. It is the hum of life itself. The ancients called it Aum, the word that began creation. Physicists call it the quantum field. It is the same vibration that connects galaxies, atoms, and thoughts. When we remember it, when we live from it, the illusion of separation dissolves. The cycle loses its purpose, for the lesson has been learned. But to remember, we must first forget the false story of progress, the false hierarchy of power, the false belief that consciousness ends at the skin. These illusions sustain the cycle. They are the walls of the labyrinth. As long as humanity believes in them, it will wander endlessly. But the key has always been simple: awareness. To become aware of the pattern, is to step beyond it. To see the wheel is to stop its turning. Imagine a future where this awareness becomes collective, where science and spirituality reunite, not as opposites, but as two languages of the same truth, where technology serves consciousness rather than enslaving it, where humanity measures progress not by conquest or consumption, but by coherence, by harmony between mind, earth, and cosmos. Such a civilization would not fear the reset, because it would embody balance. Its monuments would not be of stone, but of understanding. Its legacy would not erode, because it would exist beyond the reach of time. Perhaps that is what the ancients saw in their visions, not apocalypse, but transcendence. Perhaps they built their pyramids, their temples, their myths, not to warn of destruction, but to remind the future that the path out of the cycle exists. That one day, humanity would remember enough to choose differently. If that day is near, the signs will not come as miracles or revelations, but as recognition, small awakenings multiplied across billions of minds. The moment when enough of us see through illusion, when enough hearts synchronize to the same vibration of awareness, the shift will occur. It will not be an event, but a dawn, gradual, luminous, irreversible. Even now, hints of that dawn appear. People begin to live more consciously, to heal, to question, to seek connection. The same impulse that once built cathedrals now builds communities of awareness. The same awe that once worshipped gods now looks inward and finds divinity mirrored within. This is the awakening that the prophets and sages foresaw, not the end of the world, but the end of forgetting. Still, the old world resists. Fear clings to familiarity. Systems built on division will not dissolve quietly. The transition will feel like collapse, because we mistake endings for death when they are only transformation. Humanity must remember that destruction and creation are the same breath. Only from that understanding can peace emerge. When the dust of this age settles, what will remain will not be the empires or machines, but the memory of consciousness realizing itself. The monuments of the next world will be invisible. Compassion, coherence, and the awareness that everything is sacred. In that world, history will no longer be a wheel, but a river, flowing forward, ever creating, never repeating. The last secret of the ancients, perhaps, was this: the cycle ends when the story changes. Every civilization has told the same myth, of gods above and humans below, of birth and decay, of progress and fall. The next story must be different. It must begin not with separation, but with unity. Not with fear of the divine, but with recognition of it within all things. When humanity writes that story, the wheel will stop forever, for its purpose will be fulfilled. Until then, the whisper of memory will continue to call us home. It speaks in dreams, in ruins, in the spaces between words. It reminds us that nothing was ever truly lost, that every stone, every song, every heartbeat of every forgotten age still echoes within us. For we are not the end of the story. We are the story remembering itself. Perhaps that is why the ancients always spoke of return, not resurrection. What ends is not the world, but the illusion of its isolation. What returns is the memory of unity. And when that memory fully awakens, the cycle of resets, the long dream of history, will dissolve into something timeless. Then, at last, humanity will stand not as the builder or the destroyer, but as the witness, aware, present, whole. The labyrinth will fade, the floodwaters will still, and the silence that follows will not be emptiness, but peace. For in that silence, the universe will recognize itself through us, and it will whisper, as it did in the beginning, "You have remembered."